Number 10. FIRESTAR. Honestly, FIRESTAR is one of those flame-wielding mutants that kind of flies over my head a lot of the time. Usually I think of Pyro, but in the Ultimate Universe, Pyro is actually not resistant to his own flames and therefore is covered in scar tissue and has like no nerve endings. But FIRESTAR in both 616 and the Ultimate Universe is way cooler. Or I guess technically hotter because fire. Ironically, her character actually had a huge phobia and hate of mutants until her powers of microwave energy manipulation manifested, which seems to actually take the form of pyrokinesis in this universe. Her whole body can engulf in flames that she is thankfully resistant to. It allows her to fly and surprisingly burn things and people. Like when the super creepy Ultimate Wolverine tried to hit on her and she threatened to burn his nipples off. Number 9. Armour. Armour, aka Hisako Ichiki, is actually a pretty powerful X-Men, even in the 616 universe, who can create a psionic exoskeleton suit of armor. This exoskeleton is incredibly strong, durable, impenetrable, and it's fueled by energy from Hisako's ancestors in the 616 universe. But not in the Ultimate Universe, no sir. In this universe, Armour's exoskeleton takes the shape of giant animals and even dragons sometimes. Oh, and also in 1610, her exoskeleton is fueled by 10,000 mythological Japanese spirit demons. Like, how freaking awesome is that? Armour is cool and powerful enough that when the Ultimate Universe was destroyed, she was able to slip her way into the 616 Prime Universe, until she was kidnapped by Miss Sinister and eventually lost her life in X-Men Blue number 28 in 2018. Number 8. It's Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his Prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear bomb. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men, although it may have also been because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30. Number 7. PSYLOKKE. Colonel Betsy Braddock of Strike is England's most powerful telepath, capable of reading minds, creating psychic grenades that explode in the minds of others, and one of her coolest powers, brandishing a purple psychic energy blade. She was once possessed by the mutant David Xavier, but she was strong enough to overpower him momentarily, which, if you know anything about him and his level of power, is not something to scoff at. When Colossus dropped a car on her, her consciousness was powerful enough to jump into the body of a coma patient named Quanon, kind of calling back to how Betsy and Quanon share a connection in the main 616 universe. Number 6. Rogue. Similar to her Prime Universe version, Rogue, or Marion Carlisle, drains the life force and absorbs the memories and abilities of others through skin-to-skin contact, with the caveat being that she can end someone's life if she holds on too long. Now, in the Ultimate Universe, it turns out doing this on a mutant to the point of hitting the end of the line will actually permanently transfer those powers over to Rogue. This happened twice. The first time was with Gambit. She drained his life force when he was already near the end after a fight with the mutant Juggernaut, and she gained his kinetic energy manipulation abilities, plus sometimes his accent. The second time she did this, she drained the powers of Juggernaut himself when he was near death, gaining his abilities permanently, giving her the strength to throw cars, the durability to withstand demolishing buildings, super speed, and limitless stamina. She would use those abilities to help the X-Men. Number 5. Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as we know her, is known for her ability to phase herself and others through solid matter. She also has the ability on Earth 1610, but in this universe she discovered she can also minimize the negative space around her atoms, becoming super dense and granting herself extra dimensional mass, giving her enough strength to smash through concrete and metal and punch Spider-Man through the air, making her as hard as diamond and able to withstand attacks from the Phoenix. and making herself weigh 90 tons at peak mass. But that's as well as her phasing ability, which can allow her to walk on air and water. And that's before her exposure to Giant Man Serum to fight Galactus that leveled her up even more, allowing her to increase in size and gain a healing factor. Definitely one of my favorite Ultimate X-Men, and not just because of her romance with Peter Parker. Alright, number 4, Storm. The Omega level mutant known as Storm has a little bit of a different backstory compared to her main universe counterpart. On 1610, Aurora Monroe was an immigrant from Morocco who was found by Professor X living in Athens, Texas, where she'd been stealing cars for a living. When she took a 1978 Mustang for a joyride, the police finally caught up with her and Aurora used her powers to create a lightning storm to escape. Unlike her main universe counterpart though, she didn't have the training yet to control her powers to such a high degree and put some children in danger when she summoned the lightning storm, which eventually allowed the police to catch her. Xavier sent Jean Grey to convince the Athens authorities that Aurora was actually an FBI agent and that she was sent to relieve them of the mutant, and she went on to join the X-Men. She is much more sarcastic and rebellious and also had relationships with both Beast and Wolverine. She didn't just create storms, she created drama. Number 3. Iceman. In the 616 reality, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, was one of the original X-Men and has achieved the classification of Omega level with his powers of cryokinesis and hydrokinesis. Now, in the Earth 1610 reality, he is actually one of the youngest members of the group, and it's almost as if he was kind of given a power boost. I know that doesn't make sense. How can you like boost an Omega level character? You can't. But he wields his powers in more interesting ways. He has always been able to transform his body, but he also creates gigantic ice trolls and ice walls. He's proven his worth by stopping a Weapon X invasion and the Ultimates all on his own. Professor Xavier himself has claimed that Iceman is one of the 3 most powerful X-Men, and he's probably not wrong. But I do gotta say, I don't know what they were thinking giving him the do-rag. I don't get it. Number 2, Professor X. In the Ultimate Universe, much like in the main one, Charles Xavier was the most powerful telepath on Earth, possessing vast psionic abilities and was known as one of the most powerful mutants ever. His mutant abilities give him telepathy, astral projection, and this version experiences some telekinetic skills as well, unlike his 616 version. He is also a genius with skills in surgery, therapy, and biochemistry. The only thing that I would say is both kind of a power boost and a bit of a caveat is the fact that while he's a good guy, he is also somewhat corrupt, or like very corrupt, as well as very manipulative. He willingly reads and messes with the minds of others, like Bobby Drake, who had a girlfriend when he first joined the X-Men who almost convinced him to leave the team, so Xavier erased her from Bobby's memory. It's kinda really messed up. He even created the mutant drug Banshee. Like, sure, he knows what he's doing is wrong, but that doesn't really make it okay, you know what I mean? And number 1, it's Jean Grey. Did you think it was going to be anyone else? As an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic, she is already a pretty tough character to take on. But as almost all of us know, Jean Grey is the host for the Phoenix Force, and that still remains the case here on Earth 1610. Only, she seems to use even more of that power. Unleashing a small fraction of her power melted the armor of Apocalypse, but her full might against him tore him apart atom by atom, causing him so much pain Apocalypse begged her to stop. Apocalypse begged her to stop. As the Phoenix, she reversed time, read people's minds, saved the whole team multiple times, and took off into space, literally traveling to what was essentially heaven. There is a reason people fear Jean Grey, and the Phoenix Force gives them all the more reason to poop their pants.
Number 10. Crusader. Crusader is the daughter of X-Men team member Rogue and Avenger Captain America. I know, a weird combination. But in the reality of Earth 9811, these two ended up together after the heroes and villains on Battleworld decided to call a truce. Remaining there, they settled down and raised families, putting their differences aside. I'm not sure how their relationship worked, with Rogue not really being able to touch people and all at this point, or how she had a child considering that, but perhaps, like on Earth 616, she eventually was able to work through the trauma causing this side effect of her powers. Or perhaps the Captain America of Earth 9811 was immune to her involuntary involuntary energy and power draining effects. Either way, Sarah is their daughter. She gets much of her power from her mother, or rather she gets much of her power from the power her mother had absorbed in her day, meaning that Sarah is super strong, durable, and can fly. She is also considered worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and wields her father's shield. Number 9. Wolverine. I really wanted to put Laura Kinney higher up on this list because, well, I love her so much, but unfortunately the psionics are just always pushing some of my favorite and most powerful characters further down on these lists. Those psionics. Oh well. Laura Kinney as X-23 and now Wolverine is still one of the most powerful children of the X-Men around. Some argue that she is more clone, while others argue that she is more biological offspring of Logan, but in reality, she's kind of a bit of both. She was created as a female clone of Wolverine after his genetic material was combined with that of her creator, scientist Sarah Kinney. Sarah noticed that there were damage spots basically in the samples of Logan's genetic material that they had, which was why their cloning process had been unsuccessful up to this point. And so she used her own genetic material to patch those rough spots, which made Laura a female clone. Sarah was forced to carry Laura to term as a surrogate by her jealous colleague Xander Rice, as punishment for even creating the female clone to begin with, a strategy that admittedly had not been approved. Laura has powers similar to her father. She has a regenerative healing factor and was also trained from birth to be a skilled fighter, bodyguard, and assassin. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more children of the X-Men, there are a lot out there in the multiverse. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality of 13729. Yeah, sadly Storm and T'Challa have never had a child together in the main continuity. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Unless they had like a real secret child that we just don't know about yet, but I doubt it. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm, that she's a skilled combatant as well. As while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she is also an extremely skilled fighter. And if she's Black Panther's daughter, then she should definitely be a skilled fighter. I mean, you got two amazing parents that are both amazing fighters, so just saying. Number 7. Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the son of Charles Xavier and Mystique, if you can believe that. I know, it's pretty shocking. Charles Xavier II was technically born into the reality of Earth 616, where we later find out that while Mystique actually took the form of Moira when giving birth, Charles actually knew that he was in a relationship with Raven, so it wasn't like a trick of hers. They were actually just wanted to be together, I guess. This version of Charles, however, is an all grown up one from the alternate future of Earth 13729. When his powers first manifested, he accidentally killed his adoptive mother and ended up later joining forces with his half-brother Reyes, another child of Mystique's sired by Wolverine, another child of the X-Men. Charles Xavier II has a brilliant and conniving mind and, like his father, is an immensely gifted telepath, capable of using his powers to bend others to his will. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and while you might not think of Magneto as being an X-Men, considering, you know, he started out as an X-Men villain, he has also worked with the team before and even served as a member himself. Heck, at one point he was in charge of the whole New Mutants crew, let's not forget that. Magneto may have some questionable methods when it comes to getting justice that put him on the spectrum of villain, but I think at the end of the day, he's just trying to do what's best for mutants. Or at least what he thinks is best for mutant kind. Polaris, like her father, also has magnetic-based powers, which, like her father, are also pretty impressive. Polaris is considered an alpha-level mutant and recently got to join the X-Men team herself after being elected to join them in the Krakoan X-Men elections. Psychic elections. Imagine if we could all just vote psychically. That would be awesome. That would be so much easier. You would just like sit down and you'd be like, who do I want to vote for? Done. Number 5. Cable. Cable is the son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, non-X member Madeline Pryor, who later becomes the villain known as the Goblin Queen, and another X-Man's, Jean Grey, who kind of becomes like an adoptive mother but who also possesses Madeline's memories of raising baby Christopher. Because comics. Cable is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, often referred to as just Nathan Summers or really just Cable, although back in the day we did know him as Baby Christopher. Cable as a baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse and infected with the techno-organic virus. This is the only thing that makes him weak-ish, but really he is still amazingly strong as he can even fend off that virus, containing it to one side of his body using his psionic powers. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, as the techno-organic virus is generally known for being being, well, unstoppable. Even with his psionic powers mainly preoccupied, Cable is still a hard one to beat, as he has so many combatant-based skills that he brings to the table, and he is also an experienced time traveler besides. Number 4. Rachel Summers. Yes, get ready, because many of the most powerful X-Kids out there just happen to be Summers related, so yeah, get ready for that. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a video just to explain the complicated nature that is the Summers and Gray family tree, which honestly is a lot, and it's very timey-wimey. Rachel herself is one of those very complex kids of theirs. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from the alternate Earth of 811. In that reality, she was made into a hound, a weapon used to hunt down mutants, even being one herself. Rachel is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who also has the ability to chronoskim and manipulate time, even traveling through it. Rachel is also known for being an avatar of the Phoenix, at one time actually considered the true avatar for it, but then later having the power sort of dialed down to a mere echo of it. So she was no longer the true avatar, they were just like, you just have a thing, and it's not even like the real Phoenix Force, but it's like a version of it. Still, the seeming piece or echo of the Phoenix Force that resides within her has been known to flare up from time to time, or her connection to the Phoenix Force, however we want to see that, occasionally boosting Rachel to an off-the-charts level of power. But like I said, that doesn't happen all the time. Number 3. Hope Summers. Hope is the adopted daughter of Cable, who was originally known as the Mutant Messiah Baby. Cable saved Hope from Bishop, who basically wanted to destroy her. In Bishop's reality, the Mutant Messiah would end up causing the event that led to the oppression and persecution of mutants. However, in Cable's reality, the Mutant Messiah would grow up to become a savior, so you can see why these two were opposed on this topic. For the X-Men of Earth 616, the Mutant Messiah was the first new mutant to have been born since basically M-Day, and so she brought hope to the mutants of the 616 reality. Cable body-slided with Hope to another time to raise her in safety. He would end up naming Hope after her adoptive mother, his love who died, Hope, and she got the Summers name from Cable himself. But although she looks a lot like Jean, she actually has no biological relation to the Summers or the Grey families, at least not that we know of. Hope's mutant abilities allow her to copy the powers of anyone within a certain range. Hope also gains access to these powers without struggling at all to use them, receiving them basically at their peak level and with the auto knowledge basically of how to use them. So if you're like, oh, she's gotta like figure it out, no, she's just like instant god mode with those powers basically. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. Wanda is known for being one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. She has used her powers to completely warp reality the world over, and her chaos magic has pulled off other immensely world-changing feats, such as flipping the alignment of all major heroes and villains in the comics during the events of Axis. Initially, her chaos magic powers were believed to be somewhat mutant in origin. In fact, they were kind of presented initially as like Jinx-like mystical mutant abilities during her first appearances. However, we've since learned that both Wanda and her superpowered brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, were never really mutants at all, nor were they related to Magneto. However, they still spent a good amount of their life around Magneto, who secretly believed them to be his children, and then another good amount of time thinking that he was their actual father, until it was revealed that this was all due to manipulation by the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary just coming in and messing pretty much everybody up when it comes to their backstories and origins. Wanda herself has never really gotten along with the X-Men, especially since the events of M-Day, but she is still considered, I think, a part of Magneto's family, and a powerful one at that, regardless of her status as a mutant or a non-mutant. I know there are some people out there that want to be like, it never happened, but like, they still spent a lot of time together thinking that they were family, so I think we can still count it, friends. Also, make Wanda a mutant again. Do it. Make it happen. Give me Wanda and Quicksilver back. Number 1. X-Man. X-Man is Nathaniel Gray, the lab-born child made by combining the genetic materials of both Jean Grey and Cyclops. So basically like Cable, but if he had been made perfectly by villain Mr. Sinister. He actually hails from the alternate reality of AOA, Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Here, Sinister created him to use as his own weapon, but of course, Nate being so powerful, managed to escape Sinister and instead ended up being raised by Forge of Earth 295. He is considered one of the most powerful mutants of all time, which would also make him one of the most powerful children of the X-Men out there. Nate can warp reality, resurrect the dead, resurrect himself, travel to alternate Earths and dimensions, and even manipulate the time stream. He's basically the most OP of characters when it comes to the Marvel Universe. And if you've seen artwork of him, you will probably recognize him as someone who looks like Mutant Jesus, which yes, he is god level, so that is the point. Number 10. 1602. The X-Men of Earth 311 are surprisingly powerful for the time period in which they live, 1602. In this reality, mutants are instead called witch breed, and the team of X-Men are an Elizabethan reflection of the Earth 616 original team. Carlos Xavier is their teacher and head, while Scotius Summerisle is their leader and is joined by the ice-wielding Robert Trefusis, a beast like Henry McCoy, and the powerful telekinetic and telepath disguised as a boy, Jean Grey. Together, this team managed to help save their reality when a rift was caused due to all these heroes basically coming into existence so early, destabilizing it. In the end, Jean died from overuse of her powers, making her weaker than her 616 counterpart, but overall, the team is still pretty strong, especially for this time period, like I said. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, I don't know if there's 10 more alternate versions of the X-Men, but we can definitely do something in this realm. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And also, go check out our Top 10 Nerd Elite, our new channel, and make sure you subscribe to that where we're gonna have lots of bonus content for you. Number 9. Noir. In Marvel's Noirverse of Earth 90214, the X-Men are actually troubled youth and delinquents who are brought together by Charles Xavier, a controversial psychiatrist who believed that sociopathy was the next state of human evolution. Instead of attempting to redeem the youth whom he took into his school, the Xavier School for Exceptionally Wayward Youth, he worked to train them even further in their criminal arts. While some of them were exceptionally dangerous, at the end of the day, this version of the X-Men were just young criminals who were humans. So, yeah. But they did have guns, so there is that. Number 8. Earth Z. The X-Men were some of the last heroes standing up against the zombie horde on Earth 2149, or Earth Z. While Professor X was quickly devoured, Magneto stepped in to become the leader and encouraged the X-Men to fight to kill their opponents, as opposed to just, trying to hold them off. Otherwise, he warned the heroes would easily be overcome. Gone were the days of fighting to incapacitate their enemies. Wolverine himself seemed very much on board with this, and when Nick Fury called a meeting of the surviving heroes to explain the situation on the SHIELD helicarrier, many of the X-Men could be spotted amongst their numbers. Surviving in Marvel Zombies even just for that initial wave is pretty impressive, considering how many iconic and powerful heroes didn't make it. In fact, when they're with Nick Fury, I'm pretty sure I counted 9 of them, which I think is pretty impressive. Number 7. Days of Future Past. The X-Men team from Earth 811 didn't do too hot, and ultimately ended up trapped in a post-apocalyptic situation where the world was ending and Sentinels were killing just about everything. Although they ultimately failed in their attempt to travel to the past to fix it to save the future, with Rachel Summers transporting Kitty Pryde back in time to the body of her younger self, Kitty still found a way to save the day when she returned as Widget, and with help from an alternate Excalibur team and alternate Rachel Summers, deprogrammed the Sentinels, turning them into Protectrons of a sort who would work to defend the mutants instead of destroy them. Basically, I feel like Days of Future Past is just powerful because of Kitty, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, Kitty's pretty powerful, Kitty and Rachel, so that's all we really need. Number 6. Ultimates, or Ultimates, if you will. Earth 1610. In the ultimate reality, the X-Men were born out of a break between Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto's Eric Lehnsherr. Here, the two were friends and like-minded individuals for a time who together founded the Brotherhood of Mutants. They lived together with their students in peace and harmony on the Savage Land, until a falling out drove them apart, due to Magneto believing in ruling humankind and Xavier disagreeing with that. Magneto was the one responsible for Professor X losing his ability to walk and ending up in a wheelchair, and Professor X ended up creating his own mutant group called the X-Men. Later, during the X-Men's fight against Magneto during Ultimatum, many members of the team died, but a few of the most powerful did manage to survive. The team members that survived included Jean Grey, Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Rogue, Iceman, and Storm. And I think that was pretty much it, actually. Ugh. Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil X-Men from the Future. So this team isn't really a straight up alternate X-Men team, as the name implies. I'm cheating just a little bit here. However, they did pose as the true future X-Men when they showed up in Battle of the Atom, and I really like them, so I'm just gonna count them, cause I do the lists, so I get to decide what folks we include. Cool? Cool. This team also has some of my favorite overall members, with Charles Xavier II appearing as the leader, and also boasting of a roster including and formerly including Zorn, Jean Grey, an Ice Hulk version of Bobby Drake, an insane version of Beast, Raze, Deadpool, and a much more powerful Molly Hayes, who doesn't succumb to exhaustion after using her super strength. Which is pretty scary, because Molly Hayes is pretty strong. Number 4. The Dark X-Men. The Dark X-Men is Norman Osborn's team of mutants who were brought together in response to unrest in the mutant community during the events of Dark Reign. Honestly, I feel like between number 5 on this list and number 4, it really could have gone either way, so let me know if you feel like, the future fake X-Men should have gone above, because I was very on the fence about this. Initially, Norman Osborn was not allowed to get involved with the mutants, but after riots broke out, he was able to finally make his own X-Men team, which he declared to the public was the real X-Men team, declaring the real X-Men team outlaws. Fortunately, it turned out both the team leader Emma Frost and Namor the Submariner, who, when pitted against the true X-Men, turned on their own dark X-Men teammates. I didn't even talk about the other people on this roster, but there were lots of cool people. Number 3. X-TREME X-Men. X-TREME X-Men Volume 2 is an X-Men series and a team that takes a page out of the Exiles book. Not to be confused with Chris Claremont's X-TREME X-Men roster led by Storm in Volume 1 of that series. This version, written by Greg Pak, is a multiversal team of heroes who hail from various alternate realities. Seriously, I love this series. It's 1, really pretty, and 2, it's just really cool. The team is typically led by the main continuity Dazzler, Allison Blair. The team roster included such amazing members as Sage, Earth 12025 Hercules, boyfriend of the James Howlett of that reality, the James Howlett from Earth 12025 himself, Emmeline Frost Summers, an OP godlike immortal version of Emma Frost who is married to Scott in her reality of Earth 52012, Corporal Scott Summers from the American Civil War based reality of Earth 70213, a younger version of Kurt nicknamed Kid Nightcrawler, and a floating Xavier head. So many great people. Number 2. Age of Apocalypse. I would say the Age of Apocalypse version of the X-Men has to be one of the toughest versions out there, which shouldn't come as a surprise as, like eventually happened on Earth Z, Magneto also kinda ended up becoming their leader after the death of Xavier. Although in the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295, many things are different. Rogue and Magneto end up getting kinda married, with another kind of odd relationship developing between Storm and Quicksilver that also kinda makes sense given this reality, and Cyclops ends up working for Apocalypse, who rules the world. Another major difference is that in this reality, Charles was actually killed before he could ever form the X-Men, meaning that Magneto was their one true leader here. Number 1. Future X-Men. Personally, I think the future X-Men that we meet in Battle of the Atom, the real future X-Men of Earth 13729 that is, are pretty nuts. I mean, they have Widget on their team. Widget! And they also have a wizard version of Iceman who goes by the name Ice Wizard now, and Wiccan as one of their members as well. I don't know about you, but it doesn't really sound like it gets better than that. Jubilee also takes up the mantle of Wolverine in this reality, which is adorable, and Logan goes on to become the new professor, being known as Professor Logan, which I love.